This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
The hell with it. If I'm going to be doing this, if I'm going to be, busting my ass 12 plus hours every day and sacrificing so much of my own personal time and everything else to try to build this, then go big. Make something that you can look back on and go, wow, yeah, that's awesome. That happened. I did that.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now. So I've got Trey Cobb here. Trey Cobb's the founder of Cobb Tuning, an industry legend at this point. Trey, how's it going?
Doing great, Reed.
So let's just dive right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Sure. Well, I'm the founder of Cobb Tuning. We started in late 1999, just outside of Dallas, Texas, and kind of grew it from there. Started off as just a one-man shop. I was very, very fortunate that I had a father who was operating a tire business in a little town outside of Dallas, and he was willing to set aside some space in his shop so that I could get started with minimal overhead, which was really, really key. And, we slowly grew it from there.
And when you started, you were a tuning shop?
Yeah, we were
offering what services?
We were focused just on Subarus, and we were doing a lot of just installation of really anybody's parts. Back then, this was pre-WRX days, at least in the U.S. So we were really focused on the 2.5 RS. And at that point in time, at that period, a lot of the parts were either things that we were importing out of Japan, STI parts, things of that nature, which were kind of hard to find. So that was a little bit of a niche for us. And then just doing general installation. And then right about when the WRX was coming out, we jumped out there and pulled the trigger to get one of the first all-wheel drive dynos in the country. I had an all-wheel drive dyno installed in a tire shop. So, but that's where being very lucky and having a supportive family who, while we really didn't have a lot of capital, I didn't have any money or actually even borrow any money to start the business. We just bootstrapped it, did whatever we could to generate cash flow to invest back into the business. So definitely a lot of scary times. First probably 5 years were extraordinarily stressful, wondering if you're going to make it another week. But I think if you aren't putting yourself in a position where maybe you're a little bit uncomfortable, then it's really hard to grow to be as big as you may want to be.
And how old were you when you started?
Let's see, I was 24, 23, 24, one of those.
And what's your educational background before you got started in Cobb Tuning?
So I did go to school for a few years, but I was an engineering student. Didn't really have too much of an interest in business per se, but I did have a strong passion towards vehicles, especially turbocharged vehicles. One of my first cars was a 1988 Turbo 2 RX-7, and so I kind of fell into the rotary world, and that was one of my first jobs in this industry, was working for Rotary Performance out of the Dallas area. And I learned a ton from those guys, Chris and Ari. So that's really what planted the bug in me to really want to start my own business in this industry. So having more of an engineering, computer / mechanical background, I pretty much had to learn the business side of things as I went along. I did have my dad, who does have a business background, there to kind of help out. But man, when I started, things like P&Ls and balance sheets and cash flow forecasts and all these things were really, really kind of foreign to me.
Yeah. When you started Cobb Tuning, did you have a plan, like what your end goal was going to be, or was it for the first 5 years, maybe like you said, show up and try to figure it out?
No, I had a plan. I mean, that was one thing that was instilled in me in order to even get started. Was I had to sit down and put together a business plan to present to my dad in order to even get that one bay of space that he allowed me to use. So I had to really think through, how am I going to be relevant? What am I going to do that's potentially, a reason to exist? I think businesses need a reason to exist other than just showing up and being there. And so, I wanted to stay focused on Subarus at that time. So that was my goal. I saw that it had worked really well for Rotary Performance, staying focused, being an expert, at something as opposed to trying to be something to everybody. So that seemed to work really well. I saw a lot of shops come and go throughout the years. So I tried to learn about why they may have failed and wanted to make sure that when I was putting together my plan that I was avoiding those potential pitfalls. And it also, there's a lot of different, I've kind of learned this just over the years, but a lot of different reasons why people have for owning their own business. And there's really no right or wrong one. It's really just down to what you personally want. And I decided that I wanted to grow an enterprise. I wanted to be able to produce the types of products that I was excited about. And I knew in order to get there, I needed a lot of resources, and I wasn't going to be able to do it without a certain scale.
So how did you make that transition, and over what period of time? Like, can you take us through that process from the one bay shop to the all-wheel drive dyno, and then to start developing your own products that evolved into what Cobb Tuning is today?
It was definitely a long process. I mean, years and years of working at it, making a lot of mistakes, trying to learn from those mistakes. I mean, really early on, I think I did a pretty poor job of running a business. I think we were really product focused, but maybe didn't always do the things that we should have in order to make the customer experience as good as it could be. And I think it was important that we made those mistakes because it really forced me to hone in on what I wanted the strategy of the business overall to be. But I would say first 5 years were really just kind of figuring it out. Learning how to manage cash flow was super critical, particularly as we were, hiring employees left and right. Then the next kind of phase was, I would say, the part when we started getting into the ECUs. And at first we were just having people send us ECUs. We'd flash them and send them back. And we did that to generate the cash flow that we needed in order to do the first access port, because we couldn't have done that otherwise. We just didn't. Like I said, I never borrowed any money, so I didn't have access to the capital. And then once we got the first access port out, it was just a lot of. I remember at the time we had moved up to Salt Lake City, Utah, and it pretty much started from scratch. We were down to 3 people again, and we released the access port, and it was myself and maybe one other person that after work every day, after shipping everything or working on the cars or what have you, that we were building and packaging access ports up until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then come in the next day and start shipping them out. That's also around the phase where we decided that we were going to be a product-based company, and we started phasing out any of the service work that we were doing. So I felt that the company would struggle to be 2 different types of businesses under the same roof. I saw that a lot of the engineering resources or our time to develop product was constantly being taken away from just servicing the vehicles and installing parts, troubleshooting issues, et cetera, et cetera. And so we ended up working with another business in Salt Lake to take over that work for us because people still wanted to feel like they were bringing their cars to us, but we would actually have a shop that was right next door to us do the installation work so that we could stay focused on developing new product. We just didn't have the resources to do both very well. And then that just kept growing. We kept bringing in more and more engineers so that we could develop more and more product. Eventually got to the point where we really couldn't get the engineers that we needed up to Salt Lake. And this was about 2010. Decided to move the company back to Texas, and that's where we're at today. So.
And how has location played a role in Cobb Tuning's growth and success? Being in Dallas and then going to Salt Lake, as far as customer base and also as far as, I guess, being able to find the right key players? I wouldn't recommend you move a company back and forth halfway across the country like we've done. That's certainly, both with the expense and just the headache of doing it, it certainly probably was more of a negative than a positive. But in our case, it played an important role in our story. Moving it to Salt Lake at the time, we were still, again, focused on Subarus, and we had a heck of a lot more Subaru vehicles in Salt Lake than we did in Dallas. Certainly a lot more popular now, but back then, this is early days in this, in the Subaru performance world. You really didn't have a lot in the Sun Belt region. So that gave us access to a lot of cars. We were really small at the time, so it gave us access to a manufacturing base there in Salt Lake that was used to smaller scale projects. We could go to a machine shop and say, hey, can you make 100 of these? And the guy, is not thinking 100,000. He understands that you just need 100 of them, and he's willing to take on that job. That was, at the time, a little bit more difficult in Dallas. So that all really played into it. But then as we got bigger, we really struggled to bring in the engineering talent that we needed. Just a lot of different reasons why, but we ultimately decided that we needed to get at least a portion of the business in an area that was a bit more engineering rich. Because we use a lot of software, electrical engineers to do all the ECU work that we do. It's not an easy task. So, you just can't find those people anywhere. Oftentimes the talent that we're trying to find, we're competing with, do they go work for Google or do they work for some small little tuning shop in Salt Lake? So, yeah. So how do you do that? How do you entice them to come work for a small company like Cobb Tuning? Relatively small.
Yeah. Couple of key factors, and one thing that I would really suggest that any of your listeners put a lot of effort into, it's your company culture. If you can really focus on developing a good, strong company culture, that's tremendously powerful for recruiting the type of people that you want to help you build your business. Because that's, at the end of the day, Cobb Tuning would not be anywhere near where it is at today if it weren't for the people within the business. It certainly wasn't purely from me. It was, we developed, I feel, a really good culture that people wanted to come to work. Everybody worked hard together. And when people come in and they see that and they feel that vibe, they feel that positive energy, and they see things getting done, and they see people working together collaboratively, that excites them, and they want to be a part of your team. And so a lot of that's just down to, the leadership and the culture that you create within your business.
So how do you get everybody rowing in the same direction and collaborating, like you said?
I spent a lot of time making sure that I could clearly communicate the vision that I had for the business and making sure that I had buy-in. It's really easy to just walk in to your staff and say, listen, this is what we're going to do, get to it. But you don't always get the buy-in. You don't always get the collaboration from doing that because, you need everybody on your team to know that you're all working towards a common goal. And I think clearly communicating the vision, having a clear and understandable strategy, like I said, putting together a strategy statement. This is what we're working towards. This is what we're trying to achieve. And you have to be the cheerleader, sometimes on a daily basis to keep things moving in that direction.
When you say strategy statement, is it 5 years out? And how do you keep people guided towards that North Star? Is there milestones along the way? Like, what strategies do you have in place to kind of create that? When you say strategy statement, I'm trying to picture, is this a 5-year thing? Like, what's the length of time on your strategy statement specifically?
Our strategy statement is a couple of things. One, we have just an overall company strategy statement, which states these are our objectives. This is the scope that we're going to work within. And here's our competitive advantage. These are what, and it doesn't have to be what your competitive advantage is today, but it is what you want it to be. When you take a look at the general landscape out there, you say, you know what, we want to be known as the company that does this extremely well. And here's our objective around it, and here's the scope. The scope isn't really important, we found, because early on we didn't have a good scope defined of where we were going to, what platforms we were going to work within and which ones we weren't. So we lost focus. We started going in a million different directions. Hey, it's a cool car. Let's go make parts for it. And we spread ourselves way too thin. So having all that stuff defined really helps everybody within the organization go, okay, it makes sense why we make these parts or work on these platforms, but we don't work on these other platforms because this is our strategy. This is what we're trying to achieve. And then from that, so that can be general. You don't have to put a time frame on that. That can just be overall, this is what we're working for. These are our, I wouldn't say goals, but this is the definition of who we are as a company. And then from that, you start building plans, and those plans can be 90-day plans. They can be year plans, 3-year plans. Traditionally, we worked around 3-year plans at Cobb, and then we broke those down into, okay, well, what are we going to do this year that's going to help us get to that 3-year milepost? And then from that, you have to develop shorter consumable, weekly or daily tasks. We typically would keep, like a 90 or 100-day plan in place so that everybody knows, okay, we're taking the steps that we need to hit these long-term goals. And I find that's really helpful because when you start throwing stuff out there that's 3 years, then it kind of stays out there. You never really get to it. So if you break them down into these, achievable things that you can check off your to-do list and feel like you're making progress towards your ultimate goal, then it's amazing. And when everybody is on board with that and everybody knows what they are contributing to reach that goal, you get a lot of buy-in. And like going back to the recruiting question, people that come in and see that and you kind of lay out, hey, this is who we are and this is how we do things. This is our culture. We want to make sure that people that come and join us share this attitude, then your business can grow tremendously.
Right. I think it's really important to have metrics in place so that people can have a gauge for how they're doing.
Yeah, and also accountability.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit pro and con of certain metrics. I think you can over measure things sometimes. Really only measure what's important, and I mean that's obviously subjective, but I see sometimes people who have come in to Cobb who really, want to help with the business improve its function and try to measure everything to, I don't know, maybe make them feel more feel like they understand the business a bit better. But I think you as a leader and as the owner should also have a pretty good gut about how things are working.
So don't over-measure, but measure and hold accountable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it can depend. And the other thing that I found works really well for me is you can't treat everybody the same. I mean, you try to the best that you can, but certain, with accountability, certain personality types, certain tasks just have different ways of getting that, that feeling of accountability. So really, I couldn't give you, one hard, fast way of doing it. It really just boils down to the situation, what you're trying to get done in the individual. But what's important, though, is that you are giving that person a sense of responsibility and importance to get their stuff done. And for me, the way, I mean, everybody has different management styles. The way that I did that typically is, people knew that I hold them to very high expectations, but I don't micromanage them. It's like, as long as you get this done and you get it done to the quality that we've agreed to, and make sure that they are working through this process with you so that they agree on how you're going to be holding them accountable and getting it done, then it seems to kind of almost manage itself.
Are you trying to manage all these different types of people, creative people, and like artistic creative people, maybe like the marketing team or sales team versus product design team?
Yeah. As we grew, we had more management come in, but I always managed the engineering group. Not always directly. We have a fantastic director of engineering, and she does an amazing job at particularly managing all the projects and keeping everybody going in the same direction. But from a product engineering standpoint, I was still heavily involved on that. And then I like managing the creatives. It's not too dissimilar to managing the engineering team, actually, because they're both very creative tasks. Writing code or drawing parts in SolidWorks and then machining them. That's actually, I think, very creative and artistic work. So personality types are really not that dissimilar. The sales side, that and the finance side, those are probably the areas of the business that I say I have the less amount of interest in managing. But fortunately, we have some fantastic people in that area too. And that's kind of what I did as the business grew. Is I found the areas that I either felt that I wasn't as good at, even if I had an interest in, I knew, okay, well, maybe I'm not as strong in this area as I should be. Or I knew that I didn't have as strong of an interest in it, so that I would probably never be as good as I should be for it. And find people who are passionate about that. Find someone that's really passionate about finance. Find someone that's really passionate about HR, because they're out there, and let them, improve that part of your business while you focus on the things that you're passionate about.
Seems so common sense, but it's so difficult to do.
It is. And it's hard to trust people to take on, areas of your business that are so critical, and that, if they screw it up, it could be disastrous. So. Right.
Well, how do you deal with the devil on your shoulder saying to you, what if this doesn't work? How do you overcome that feeling and move forward?
It's taken time, and learning that mistakes don't have to be the end of the world. So just move forward with it, see how it works. And in time, after you've made those mistakes, you start trusting yourself a bit more, or you start trusting the fact that you can get yourself out of bad situations a bit more. I mean, as with a growing company, it's really difficult. You either have a stalemate and you don't make any decisions at all, which is disastrous, or you make a decision and you see how things are playing out, and you hopefully, if you need to change course, constantly watch how it's playing out and be willing to make a change. I've seen in the past sometimes where people have made a decision, a leader within a business, or even for us, a leader within one of our groups, make a decision, and it's not going to plan, and things are probably not going to work out, and they struggle to admit that, okay, maybe this was a bad decision. But I don't think you lose confidence in the people around you and your team if you recognize something's not working and just say, listen, okay, this didn't work out. Let's try something else. And oftentimes asking the people around you, hey, what's another solution, goes a long way.
Right, not trying to come up with every solution yourself and then.
Oh no. Yeah. It's as well as you may know your business, especially as you grow. There's going to be the people within your organization that really develop a lot of specialized knowledge in certain aspects of the business that you probably just can't get to without doing it every day. And those are the people that you have to just come to and say, hey, walk out to the warehouse and say, hey, we're seeing this isn't working as well as it could. here, I have some ideas, but let me first listen to what you think may improve things. And through that and through collaboration, you can probably come up with a better solution than any single person would have come up with on their own.
Trey, what's your Achilles heel?
I would say the thing that I have to work on the most is probably networking. Networking is an important aspect of business, is going out and finding other resources outside of your business that can help you. And it's one area that I've never done very well. I've always kind of worked within the bubble of Cobb, so I don't do that well. The other thing that I would say as an Achilles heel is the actual project management details. So I feel pretty comfortable with thinking about the overall picture and constantly thinking of the overall vision of the company, what's the direction that we're going in, and what are our 1 and 3 year goals. But then I have to work with other people within our team to kind of come up with, okay, what's the day-to-day look like? Because my mind doesn't work quite as well in that.
Yeah. So when you were first getting started, who did you lean on for the day-to-day support? If you're thinking broad, who's helping you to figure out kind of shorter day-to-day?
It wasn't any one person. It was a lot of it was still just me. I just wasn't very good at it.
I got it.
And so I don't think early on we weren't able to get as much done as I wanted to get done, and we weren't able to get as much done in the time frame that I wanted to get done. Things used to take just way longer than it should have, and a lot of it was just down to not managing the day-to-day tasks as efficiently as I could have. And we've gotten a lot better at it. And it's just an area that you're always improving on, and it's always changing.
Yeah.
So
one thing that I think is interesting is you started with service, but you were always focused on being a product company. You integrate, you have service and products, and they go hand in hand. I guess maybe you got your focus away from service, but you never stepped away from service. It always went hand in hand with your product.
Yeah, and I guess when I was mentioning that, I was thinking in that time frame where the company was back in early 2000s. We didn't have the resources to do both, so we did make the decision to at that phase of our company's life, we said, okay, well, we can't be good at both right now. It's not that a company can't be, we couldn't be. So we said, well, let's focus on the products, and let's build the brand, let's build the company through the products. And then in late 2008, we made the decision, okay, well, now we have the resources to start doing this service work again. Maybe not at our R&D headquarters, where we're having to really focus all of our energies on what are the next products coming out, or how can we improve the products that we're already making. But we wanted to get in direct touch with our customers again. And so that's when we started opening up the retail locations, is we really wanted the opportunity to develop and provide an experience that we felt matched the caliber of the parts that we were trying to make. And it wasn't that they couldn't get it at other shops, because there's a lot of really good shops out there that are offering our parts, but we just felt like we needed to get back into that world so that we could get direct feedback from our customers real time, and also get direct feedback from the technicians real time that are installing the parts, instead of always installing the parts in this little clean room bubble that is the engineering department, where everything always just fits perfectly.
Right.
We wanted to, okay, these are parts that are coming off the production line, and shipping them out, and we don't ship to the retail locations. We're not shipping out the, certain special parts. They're getting the same parts that we're shipping out to all of our other shops. And so we would get instant feedback. Hey guys, this this started off great, but this exhaust is now starting to have a weird angle to it, or you may want to look at how this piece is being machined. It's not fitting quite as well as it did early on. So that was the type of feedback that instant feedback that we really helped improve the business. And then also, like I said, just being able to see what people were doing with their cars and listening to what they wanted to accomplish very directly. I mean, we got that through social media and through forums and stuff, but it's a whole different animal when you're sitting across from somebody and listening to what it is they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. How did location play a role with where you chose your retail locations? Was it about location, or was it about partners that were already in place?
It was
kind of just happened to be there.
Combination. At the time when we started opening up the retail locations, we were in Salt Lake, and we were struggling with. We had broadened our base outside of Subaru. So we were working on several other manufacturer platforms, and some of them were naturally aspirated. And Salt Lake is, we were right around 4,500 feet elevation or so, and naturally aspirated car with tuning, it was hard to quantify the changes. And so we started looking at what could we do at sea level. And we had some really great partners in the Dallas region, and we had a really great group in Portland. And so we were trying to decide what we were going to do, and ended up actually setting up shop in both areas right around the same time, really because we had just fantastic people that we could hire there. And it also achieved our goal of having, a C-level extension of our R&D for dyno. And coincidentally enough, I made sure that I timed opening up 2 brand new business units, retail locations, at quite a bit of an expense, right at the moment that we had the Lehman collapse, or the recession started. Yeah. So it's pretty fantastic timing on my behalf. I think that was probably the absolute. November of 2008 is a month that I will never forget, because
Take us there. Tell us that story, please.
Yeah. So, it was literally within just that month that our business pretty much ground to a halt. I think it's true for most of us in this industry, at least when you're doing a lot of product-based parts, is that the winter season, November kind of into December and definitely January are your slow times, and then things start to pick back up. So I was always expecting, right around SEMA time or so, that things kind of start to slow down just a little bit. It ground to a halt. We had no business suddenly, like overnight. And we had also spent a lot of money getting these new locations set up. We were spending a lot of money in new product development, growing the business as fast as we can. And so, I listened to probably too much of the news at the time, of all the doom and gloom, and how, it was going to be years of recovery and such. And I just took a look at our numbers and said, okay, well, we won't be able to survive at this rate. If this is going to be our new reality, then we're going to have to change some parts of the business. And that's probably what led me to what would be, I consider, the single most worst decision that I ever made with Cobb Tuning, at least thus far, which is the decision to discontinue new development of any of our hard parts, which hard parts being any of the non-electronic, non-access port parts. And yeah, that turned out to be actually a pretty poor decision.
So at that point, you guys are doing access ports, and those are being really successful, and you'd been investing money into new hard parts, exhausts, things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, and the cash flow that was coming out of the access ports was great. Our retail locations were installing parts other than just our own brand, so we weren't, it wasn't, they would dry up and not have access to exhaust systems or intake systems or whatever if we stopped making certain parts. We just Sure. looked at things and said, okay, as a business, what are we offering the market that's unique? And there are a lot of exhaust systems out there. There's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great intakes out there. What are we doing that's truly unique and truly impacting the industry? And it came down to the electronics and the access port. So we said, okay, well, this is great because the electronics, for the most part, other than some very minor differences, they're all the same. So inventory control becomes way easier. We can stock a handful of parts to cover a ton of vehicles, as opposed to having a different exhaust for every single different system, and just all the cash flow demands that go around trying to keep around that much inventory. So it it was on paper, it looked like a great decision. But the market, and our customers told us otherwise.
So you made the decision to stop doing that, and that was a bad decision because you would have otherwise made sales that you didn't make. Is that?
It was a bad decision.
Is that pretty much what it breaks down to?
Yeah, well, it was a bad decision because it really wasn't what our customers wanted. We weren't really listening. We weren't truly listening to our customers, and we lost a momentum in, a lot of categories. That took us quite a while to build back. And that's part of it is, when you release something, there's typically this momentum that gets built behind it. And when you shut that off, you have to restart and rebuild that momentum. And that took a while. I mean, there were some good things that came out of it. It did give us an opportunity to go back and rethink a lot of stuff that we were doing as far as the design go. It was kind of pushing the reset button, if you will, but it could have been done. And the good things that came out of it could have been accomplished without making the decision that I did to shut everything down completely.
Right. So you think you would have survived and thrived if you would have kept the hard parts?
We would have. I mean, the months that followed, things came back. It wasn't as doom and gloom as everybody set it out to be. I mean, that month was pretty bad, but that happens. And fortunately, this industry is not entirely, but certainly a lot more than a lot of other industries. It's pretty recession proof. I mean, people still find a way to modify their cars, even when the economy is kind of crappy.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the insight at that point in time, and it was, like I said, you make the best decisions that you feel with the information that you have at the time, and sometimes they don't work out for you. But you have to be willing to, lead the company and make the decision. And when it turns out to not be the right decision, if that is the case, then you say, okay, well that wasn't a great decision, but we're going to make the best of it, and we're going to actually try to become better. The next version of us is going to be better than what came before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to keep a positive mindset. That's really, for me, what a lot of operating the business boils down to is if you can maintain that positive attitude, then that everybody around you will feed off of that.
That's tough to do, though, for sure.
Yeah, you got to put your game face on sometimes. There's sometimes you're highly stressed, and I know that I've shown it before. But at the end of the day, you always have to look at, okay, well, things are going to improve, things are going to get better. If you don't have that mindset, you won't accomplish it. If you're always thinking in a negative, then that's what your result's going to be.
Yeah. Trey, how much time do you spend nowadays on high-level thinking versus day-to-day activities? So things like strategy and long-term company goals versus, the daily grind of meeting with your team or designing products or business development deals or whatever your daily grind consists of?
I think if you averaged it over the course of several months or a year, then I would say at least half of the time is spent either thinking of or having discussions about long-term strategy. It's something that you're constantly having to, you're constantly reinventing, or not reinventing, but constantly rethinking what you need to be doing in order for the business to be in the situation and in the position that you want it to be long-term. I mean, it's especially as you get bigger, that ship takes a lot longer to change course. When you're really small, it's easy. You can come in and say, okay, we're going to be, going off in this different direction now, and you have 3 or 4 guys with you. That, okay, when everybody's on board, but you have multiple locations and nearly 100 people. It takes a while for that information to disseminate and be understood, and the change to actually occur, because people get stuck in their way of doing things, and change becomes a little bit more difficult to make.
Right. Trey, you had mentioned a SWOT analysis of the industry.
Yeah.
So an SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Did you put together a SWOT analysis of Cobb from the very get-go, and how important is that concept to your business, now and over the last few years?
It's something that we do consistently, and it's even something that we do within each platform group. So,
can you take us through a SWOT analysis? Just maybe high level, just kind of.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're doing is you take a look at, for instance, we do it on all of our platforms. So every platform that we support, be it Subaru, Ford, Nissan, what have you, we have a group of people within the organization that comprised of every function group within the business. So you've got customer service, you've got the engineers, you've got everybody. They all come together and they take a look at what's the market that we play in, what are our internal strengths and our internal weaknesses, and what are the external opportunities and the external threats. So internal strengths and weaknesses, it's, what as a company and as a group of individuals, what are you good at? What are you maybe not so good at that you can then look to see how you can approach the opportunities that are out there in the marketplace, as well as the potential threats that are in the marketplace. The threats can be your competitors. The threats can be just overall market forces. Threats for Subaru could be, let's say, Subaru decides to stop importing, turbocharged vehicles. Low likelihood, but that would be something you would consider to be a threat. And so you then use those analysis to kind of make decisions about what plans you should put into place in order to optimize, your end result. And that's also based around your overall strategy. What are you trying to accomplish? And it's also can be based on what you want out of the business. I mean, there are people who run in these businesses because they're financing a hobby, and that's great. They want to be able to enjoy modifying their own car, and thus they operate a business that provides them the ability to do that. Other people are doing it for the thrill of racing, and as long as they can, maintain and improve their racing program, then that's what they're after. And so you build your goals around what it is that ultimately got you into the business to begin with.
And when you do a SWOT analysis, do you have everybody from different departments? Everybody's combined kind of helping. It's not just, the executive team?
No. I mean,
Okay.
as you get bigger, sometimes you do start reducing the amount of people in the room because you can have just too much noise. But you don't do things in bubbles. You have to, or in silos, as they say. You have to bring in other people's inputs. If it's just executives making the decision, then you nothing to take. It's not taking away anything from our executive team or managers. But if you're not doing it day to day, if you're not touching the customers on a day-to-day basis, then you may not be able to make 100% the best decisions. You might be able to make the best decisions for the company overall in terms of the business health, but that might not be the best decisions for the long term and definitely for the customers. So bringing in people, bounce ideas. We always try to make it a very collaborative process because you want people to have buy-in and you want them excited about what the company is doing, and they want to feel, your team wants to feel involved.
Yeah. And did you do that? You said you did it for every platform.
Yeah, initially.
Or every new product type of.
Not every new product. We do it regularly per platform, and then we do, just an overall company SWOT. But early on, before we kind of got to the size that we're at today, we would just, do a SWOT analysis for the company as a whole. And that worked really well for us. It was really only when we started developing these platform groups that was based on the manufacturer that we were working on. The reason why we did that is because a GTR guy is just different than a Mazdaspeed guy, who's different from the BMW guys. And we didn't want to treat all of our customers like one platform. We knew we had to talk to them. We had to run our business for that platform around what that platform needed. And so you have the teams within the business that are doing that.
So when you're one brand, how do you speak to different customers differently? Because they're totally different groups of people. Like you said, maybe GTR guys are different than BMW guys, are different than Subaru guys. So
yeah,
how do you pull that off?
We developed kind of our own internal language to help us describe how the various customer groups were in our eyes. And that's something that you are continuously refining, but we tried to collect as much information about the customers as possible. And this is something that we only started doing a couple of years ago, but it's been really, really helpful. And it's something that I think Cobb as an organization is putting a lot of focus on getting even better at in the future. And that's really the only way to do it is collecting as much information about your customers as possible. See what parts they're using. See, are they do-it-yourself guys? Or are they do-it-for-me guys? Meaning, are they the customers that you ship them the parts and they're installing it, in their driveway? Or are they the guys that are taking their cars to a shop? And, what are you have the different levels also where you have the guys who have more, this is a Steve Jobs quote that I love, people that have more time than money versus more money than time. And the different platforms that fits as well. And so you have to talk to those individuals or present information to those groups differently based on where they're at. So.
Perfect. That's a great explanation. Thanks, man. We like to take action on Do It for a Living. Can you suggest one action item to our listeners that they can do this week to improve their situation?
I think I'd go back to the discussion that we had a little bit earlier about, sitting down and thinking about what the company strategy is going to be. Thinking about it alone by themselves first, and then start that discussion within their company. Having that in place and having that focus helps just get your entire team moving in the same direction. And it's hard to do when you're just really busy doing the day-to-day grind, but it's hard to really move forward with any significance until you get that done. At least that's
so. Yeah. Make a plan.
Make a plan. Yeah, I mean, you always want to have a personal plan, but you need a plan for the business as well. And don't be afraid to think big. I mean, I couldn't have imagined that Cobb has gotten to where it is today when I first started. It grew way beyond what I was ever envisioning, but at least initially. But as time went on, I just started thinking, well, the hell with it. If I'm going to be doing this, if I'm going to be, busting my ass 12 plus hours every day and sacrificing so much of my own personal time and everything else to try to build this, then go big. Make something that you can look back on and go, wow, yeah, that's awesome. That happened. I did that. But unless you just really like the pain and sacrifice, just go work for somebody else if you just want to keep things easy. I like if you're going to do it, just do it, and don't be afraid to potentially fail, because you're going to learn. It's better than just sitting and going to work every day and not really feeling any sense of accomplishment.
So, Trey, I want to jump to kind of quick answer questions, and I'm just going to fire these things off at you.
Okay.
Can you tell us about a game-changing product that you've seen in the last year?
I've thought about this a little bit, because it's something that you ask the other guests, and I haven't really seen. I mean, I could give an easy answer and throw out some product that Cobb's working on.
Sure.
But I think starting to look a little bit more big picture, there's a product that's out there, a concept and a product that's out there that came out a couple of years ago that I think is something that could be a huge game changer for the industry. And that's a company out of the UK called Aristech. And they have this technology where it's basically a full electric turbocharge technology. And it's not something that you see on the eBay, cheap little knockoff stuff. This is actually a pretty cool thing where it decouples the turbine and the compressor of the turbocharger, and in between, if you will, you have energy storage. So you could stick the turbine anywhere in the exhaust system that makes sense, constantly collect that energy stored into this battery or energy storage device, and then run the compressor completely independent of the exhaust energy. And you think about it, you have zero lag. You can run completely, change the whole dichotomy of how you're sizing these turbochargers and the drivability and everything else. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of the automotive manufacturers are moving to as well. So I think if some enterprising business out there could figure out a way to make that work in the aftermarket, that would change everything, I think.
So that's trickled down from Formula One, right?
Yeah, it's similar to what they're doing in Formula One. And I mean, that's where I personally spend a lot of time looking at for product ideas and innovation, because not to speak bad about us in the industry, we're often hampered with what innovation we can do with the price points that we have to work within and other things. Yeah. But, really spend a lot of time looking at what's happening in motorsports. I read, a lot of periodicals like Race Engine Technology, some of the other stuff that's out there that you can research, or also spend a lot of time on SAE's website reading papers that manufacturers are putting out, because there's a lot of really cool information out there. And I think you should always be a student of what you do for a living, not just from a business point of view, but you should also really understand the technologies that are coming down the road. So you have to invest in yourself as well as you invest in the business. So.
What software program are you using daily?
In today's world, it's a lot of Excel. I don't have a particular killer app or anything. I mean, I've used, when you do ECU reverse engineering, we have tools for that. I used to use SolidWorks a ton. But the consistent has been Excel. Spreadsheets are awesome.
That's the number one answer to that question.
I don't know what I'd do without Excel, honestly. I'd be lost. Even my to-do list oftentimes is in Excel.
So I think you already touched on this, but do you have a favorite app that you use daily?
I don't, no. I think with being based in so much technology that I would be a huge app guy, but no, not really.
Okay. How about a favorite shop tool?
Changes a lot over time. Aside from obviously the dynos, O-scope, super critical. I would say for us as a business, other than some of the electronic stuff, having a 3D printer is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how affordably you can build some stuff now. I mean, it's so much nicer to know that a part's going to be made to the spec you need it to within a couple hours. It's just phenomenal.
Right. That's definitely a game changer.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yep. Trey, what do you think the future of automotive performance is going to be? You kind of touched on that with the game-changing product.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at the overall, aftermarket, and you mentioned kind of the SWOT analysis, and you think we're seeing a surge in turbocharged vehicles, forced-inducted vehicles. I think that's going to be a trend that only continues in time, and that's fantastic for us in the aftermarket, because we can definitely make measurable gains pretty easily. I think also you're going to see a lot more system integration, just total vehicle system integration. A lot of it will be software-based, and that's going to present a whole new level of challenge for us in the aftermarket, because it's going to be more and more difficult to just change one part within the system and get the type of net result or net gain that we may have been able to get in the past. So the better that, we as companies can wrap our head around and understand how those systems work, I think better overall we'll be able to provide a good experience for the customers. Because we can't expect the customers to really understand how all the systems work. They want you to make their car do something better. And so it's our jobs to be the expert of how we work within all the constraints of those systems to achieve that.
Right. And that's going to go back to, are they do it yourself or are they do it for me?
Yeah, either way. I mean, do it yourself guys are installing parts themselves, but they still expect that when they're done, that they go for their test drive with their buddies and the car's better than it was before. I don't think we can get away long with put 100 miles and a couple of drive cycles on it, you should feel the difference. I mean, that's not really a solution.
Yeah. Trey, how do we connect with you and your company?
Well, CobbTuning.com is where you can get all the great information about the company, and you can still reach me at Trey, Trey, at CobbTuning.com. So, and I love when people email me questions, even if they just want advice. I actually find that pretty rewarding because, like I said, if I can help somebody else not make some of the exact same mistakes that I didn't actually learn much stuff from, then I'd be actually very happy to help.
Nice.
Sometimes it is good to make your own mistakes, though. So that might not be able to answer every question, but
well, you can at least try, and I think mistakes are inevitable.
Yep, absolutely.
Trey, thank you so much for taking some time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate what you're putting together here. I think it's going to help out a lot of people. I wish I would have had access to it 15 years ago.
Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.